welcome on into this week's episode of Digging Deeper. I'm Matt Cordy, joined here today by the other Robert Kasper. It's Pastor Gabe.
I see what you did there. Very clever.
Yeah, we're just two guys that are glad we don't have to wear a tie on Sunday. Much like that artist that you mentioned at the end. That
Rustin
no
Kelly.
one knew except yourself.
It's so true.
At all three gatherings.
It's 250,000 people listen to him every month on Spotify, but no one in that
You're one of the
church.
250,000.
I'm one of the 250,000.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. It's good. It's good.
Absolutely. Well, we have a lot to dig into here.
We do.
On this week's episode. We were even mentioned in the sermon. Pretty cool.
Oh, Digging Deeper was. Yeah, I did a little promo.
That's right. So plenty to get into here. So let's just dive in. Get your shovels out, people.
Love it.
Within the sermon, you opened up with that fun story from John Dickson.
Yeah.
I even thought about grabbing a pin just for like
stabbing me in the arm.
Yeah. Norma had some here. She's working on costumes yesterday. But
I've been great, man.
I don't know if that would get past the YouTube
yeah, probably
guidelines.
too violent, right?
Yeah. So we'll skip that. But anyways, I did think it illustrated very well how something we're all pretty familiar with. Like people ignore evidence to believe what they want to believe.
Yep.
And you mentioned here in your notes, like you have even more evidence to support that here.
Yeah, so there's this thing that psychologists or social psychologists call motivated reasoning, and it's based on what philosophers would call background beliefs, right? So I have sort of beliefs that just sort of inherently operate in the back of my consciousness, right? And they motivate me to reason a particular way, right? Like, and again, I mean, I mentioned this on Sunday, but like, we just actually aren't inherently rational creatures. Like we just know we aren't. And so there isn't, like, we're not computers. And so our reasoning is motivated. We come to see things as true, believe things as true through the motivation that's provided for us by our background beliefs. And so one of those things is like, if it's something I want to believe, all I ever ask is, can I believe it? Right. So if I don't know, if I want to believe that Jordan Love, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, is a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. Like all I need is just the slightest bit of evidence to prove that to me so that I can believe it, right? But if it's something like I really don't want to believe, then the thing I look for is, must I believe it? So it's can versus must, right? So is there enough evidence that like I can't escape this? I have to believe this thing, right? So it's like, you know, like scandalous, Matt. I don't think the earth is flat, okay? I just don't. It would take so much evidence that I'd have to be like, must I believe the earth is flat? Like it would take, right? It'd have to pile up that much. So all that to say is like what we want to be true really actually plays a pretty big role in what we end up believing, regardless. Well, not totally regardless of evidence. Like evidence does matter. Like if we didn't have any evidence for the resurrection, man, I'd like to think I'm honest enough that I wouldn't believe in it. And I don't think at the very least the billions of people around the globe that believe in it, at least enough of us would be honest enough to be like, all right, evidence doesn't back it up, right? So evidence does matter, and like we do want to believe a lot of the things we believe. Yeah.
Now, is that the same thing as confirmation bias, or is it a little bit different technically?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that. I think, I mean, there's something to be said, right, where it's like, I'm looking for the thing that's going to affirm what I want to be true. Right. Yeah, I think that's probably right. That's probably a similar type phenomenon.
They're related in a way.
Yeah, I think that's right.
No, I think that's super easy for people to see how that could apply to really in any section of their life. And you have people where you're like trying to convince someone of something and they're like, nope, just because of like one really small thing they're trying to pick
totally
in, but
no, I mean, right, I mean, we definitely see this like in our politics and stuff too, right? Like you put data out there and someone will be like, well, see, this proves my conservative point or this proves my liberal point or whatever. It's like, I mean, maybe, but we choose to interpret things the way we want to, and we seem to confirm our biases quite a bit.
Moving along, the other Mary, we talked about how she encountered Jesus after the resurrection, and in the sermon you talk about ways that we can encounter him too, sort of at the tail end of your sermon. And that we have encountered him. You have a few more examples and sort of written in a little bit different format here in your notes.
So, I wanted to get at like, what does it mean for us to encounter Jesus? And, I mean, there's a lot of ways we do. And I mean, and genuinely, I talked about some of the ones. Like one is really in his word. And I do mean the Bible, but I do also mean the preached word or the proclaimed word, which again is not just a sermon, though that's part of it. Theologically, it'd be something like me saying to Matt, hey, like Jesus loves you. He's with you. He's for you. And so even just, or Matt saying that to me, it's not because I'm a pastor, it's just any Christian saying that to another person. Like Jesus comes to us through his word. And so there's an encounter we have with him just from those words of promise spoken over us, right? So that's one way he comes to us. And then in the sacraments, which I touched on as well, of course, he comes to us in that way. And then, of course, like in prayer, like he's there, he meets with us, he talks with us. And so those are really kind of the ones that I think like he's just there and you can trust he's there and that's that, right? And then, I shared this like, it's sort of actually a moderately mystical experience that Rustin Kelly, the singer-songwriter, has this encounter with God. And so like, that's cool. And there's, so many examples of people having things like that, which is awesome. And in fact, just like recently, just in my own sort of pastoral work with people is like, we have people at our church right now that like, they're here because Jesus spoke to them in a dream, like, and keeps speaking to them in dreams. We have a person here who met Jesus while they were on shrooms, and became a Christian. And it's like, man, is that what I don't know, but like Jesus does what he wants, And so I think there are these actually sort of profound mystical spiritual experiences that people also have in which they encounter Jesus. And I don't want to discount those, and I actually want to hold those up and celebrate those and recognize them. And like, this is the tension, right? I also don't want to say, and these are the only ways to encounter Jesus. And if you haven't encountered him this way, then your faith isn't real or Jesus isn't real or whatever, right?
That's where it gets dangerous, yeah.
Right. That's the tension to hold. Is like, I think this stuff's really cool and we should pay attention to it. Like the amount of people this has happened to is worth noting, right? And for, I think for many people maybe who grew up in the church, like they maybe haven't had some sort of profound mystical encounter, but they're like, yeah, I trust his word. Yeah. Okay. Then you've encountered him. Yeah, I trust what he gives me in the Lord's Supper. Yeah, then you encounter him, right? Yeah. So it's like holding that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the sacraments are encountering Jesus in, like, physical ways there, too. So
that's right. Have you ever had a mystical encounter with the Lord, Matt? I'm going to ask you. On
nothing on that level, yeah. But, no, I do think that, I'm not discounting that there can be. But in the same way, I'm a lot of ways similar to you, group PK sort of situation there. But...
Well, I've had a couple myself, though, for what it's worth.
There were definitely times where I think I grew into my faith more.
Sure.
But, nothing on the level where I necessarily saw Jesus come down and speak to me in a vision.
Yeah, for sure. Like I haven't at quite that level either.
Right. Yeah. So, but he works in different ways. And
that's right.
Yeah.
And
that's not to limit him, I think, too.
That's exactly right. And I think it's similar to, I mentioned this on the front end of my sermon, but the way that post-resurrection Jesus encounters different people differently. I think in many ways he still does that today, where it's like some people it's like it's going to be a dream. Some people it's like, I don't know, my dad's a pastor and this stuff seems pretty good, right? And it's like, this is it. Yeah,
the marketing guy in me knows that like you need to reach people in different audiences in different ways. Like there's different modes and means. So yeah, I love that.
Love it, man.
All right, let's cut to the chase. You teased it in the sermon. I know there's a whole bunch of fans here that tuning in, digging deeper for the first time. They're like, we're here for the other Mary. We want to know more about her. So what do you got for us, Gabe?
Yeah. So one of the other theories about the other Mary that I didn't get into is that she is the wife of Clopas. But it also could be the daughter of Clopas, so it's sort of confusing. So, if you read the Gospels, there are a lot of Marys. Like, it's a lot of Marys.
Yeah.
And so sorting them through, and even some of the women where it's like Salome, her name might also be Mary. Like, so that, like, it's this whole thing of, like,
right.
So even the names that seem different may also be Mary. So it's, like, very confusing. But there's this kind of recurring character named Mary, and it's Mary of Clopas. Like, that is actually the most literal translation, is it's Mary of Clopas.
Is that the same Clopas we're talking about next week, or is that Cleopas?
Bingo, bango, bongo. That is another big question people wrestle with. We don't know.
We might save that for next week.
Right, so next week,
Road
to
Pastor
Emmaus.
Marcus.
Yeah, he can. Honestly, he will probably solve it. So it's like... so it could be Cleopas and Clopas could be the same. And then the question is, all right, well, who's Clopas and or who's Cleopas if it is the same guy? We don't know. Yeah. Now, and then there's a whole theory that Cleopas is actually St. Peter because it's sort of in the Greek. It's a similar sounding name to Peter's name before his name is changed.
Yeah.
So because like St. Paul calls him Cleopas in Galatians. So it's like, oh, is this Peter? And is Luke choosing to refer to Peter at the end of his gospel, not as Peter, but as Cleopas?
Right.
And then is Cleopas Clopas? And we know Peter was married. So is it Peter's? So, wheels within wheels, man.
Yeah.
So we don't really know. And that's the other thing. So Clopas, because it's just Mary of Clopas, it could also be that that's her dad, that maybe she's unmarried. And it's like, that's her paternal relationship. And so that's what they name her as. But then here's the other thing. Okay. If Clopas is not Peter,
right?
Okay, it seems that based on where would it be, John 19:25, it seems that I'm trying to remember how this works. Yeah, that Clopas is, I want to say, Mary, the mother of Jesus's brother.
Oh,
okay, and so if Mary, the other Mary, is married to Clopas, it's conceivable that she is Mary, the mother of Jesus' sister-in-law and Jesus' aunt, which is like pretty sick.
What a flex that would be.
That'd be amazing.
Let me tell you about my nephew.
Right, like that's a better flex than like the mom of little James. Right,
yeah.
But again, like that's a theory. Like we don't know. And so that's where kind of my point in the sermon was like, I'm just going to go with like what we know.
Sure.
At least biblically, like kind of what's pretty clearly revealed. This is like kind of a cool theory. She could be Jesus's aunt, but we really don't. But I mean, that's the thing. If she was, I don't know. I feel like when she's listed in Matthew 28, it wouldn't be Mary Magdalene, the other Mary. It'd be like Mary Magdalene and Jesus's aunt. You know, like, it'd be like you would recognize this. So that's where I'm kind of inclined to be like, nah, I think that's probably a different gal.
Yeah.
So,
and I think ultimately it may not matter because that's not where she necessarily found her identity in.
That's right.
And I think that's my favorite part from the sermon. You were talking about just the significance and where, I mean, a lot of us where we're trying to find significance or importance or trying to center our lives around certain things. But the other Mary centered her life around Jesus and the resurrected Christ. And you wrote that out in a different couple ways here, how we might feel insignificant and not special in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I did. And I think this is something I don't know, God sort of put on me as a burden lately pastorally just for people. Because what can happen, and I don't know, Matt, you've been working at a church long enough now too. What can happen in church work, if I'm just honest with you, is as a church worker, you can be like, hey, we want to do these things. We got these ideas. We're going to make it happen. And then like people just like don't turn out for it, or they're just not about it, or, things don't happen. And so then you can, in your head and in your heart, at least for me, is I get like kind of curmudgeonly. I'm like, oh, these people don't care about the gospel. I mean, the reality is like, I know, like, dude, so many of you are just like trying to live, man. Like you're just like trying to pay your bills and maybe raise your kids, or if you're a student, you're just trying to make friends and get your degree and get to where you're going to in life. And it's like, and church, and again, I don't want to set up a consumerist mindset to church. And at the same time, I do want church to be a place where people receive grace and healing and comfort, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, we should also receive challenge and take steps in our faith, right? But I want it to be a place where it's like, I don't show up and feel beat down, but I feel built up. Yeah. And so that's like a burden God's put on me, because I think I've wrestled pastorally, just like my own ego and pride has been to be like, I just want to beat these people down because they don't do what I want. Like, I'm just real.
Right.
Like, and that's not of God. And so it's just been a conviction of mine the last few months where God's been like, dude, these people are like, they're just trying to breathe, man. They're just trying to pay their bills. Like, what can you do to lift them up? What can you do to encourage them with a word of grace?
And if I may,
please,
to tie it back in actually to Monday, Thursday, I know that's in the rearview mirror, but still, I think you talked about this a little bit in there, how you talked even a little bit sort of behind the scenes of how you attack your preaching style and like, who am I preaching to? And there's like people in church for different reasons where they need a kick in the pants. Maybe they don't.
Right.
To quote you. But I do think that that's helpful, just thinking where there's different things that you can get out of church, and they're all good things, and we all need them at different points in our lives as well too.
That's right. No, I think that's right. And I think it's like there's a way in which as a culture, we're in different seasons too, where we need different things. I mean, like I look back at my preaching during like 2020 and 2021, and like it was this weird mix. And I think I don't think I was wrong in it. I mean, I probably was wrong at some level because I'm a sinner. So, but it was this weird mix of like trying to speak a lot of comfort for people in the midst of isolation, but then in the midst of political upheaval, trying to have like really clear guidance on some things as well. Sure. That, you know, some people liked, some people didn't, whatever. But I think actually that was what was necessary at that time. And then in some ways saying like in the chaos of our world and even just like throughout sort of our economics right now, these sorts of things, like it seems like God is I think hopefully if I'm attentive to the Spirit, just trying to lift his people up and let us know we're not forgotten. So it's like different seasons where communally and then individuals within that where it's like maybe one Sunday Matt does need a kick in the pants, but then the guy next to him just needs to be told he's loved, right? And so it's like, how do we...
The congregation's not a monolith.
Like, it's not a monolith. That's right. That's right. And then can I add this like other part? Is that okay? So, I mean, the other thing that I was thinking of like trying to get at that is like, it's kind of my own struggles in terms of significance where I think some people might be like, you know, pastor, like, well, it's interesting. Some people be like pastor, like it's not even a real job. Right. Like, I mean, I've heard people say that like, and
you just work on Sundays.
You just work on Sundays.
You come in for digging deeper, obviously.
Right. Obviously. Yeah. And a half hour evidence on Tuesdays. Yeah. And then sermons take no time to prep. I just go up and do them. But right. I mean, but there are people that really do, you know, kind of bemoan the pastoral office and think it's kind of a joke of a profession and like, that's fine. But you know, that sits in the back of your head. Right. But I'm like kind of over those dudes. Cause like, I don't know, like enjoy Reddit, like whatever, you know? But so then there's people that I think kind of the other side of that think like, well, Pastor Gabe, I bet you don't think your life's insignificant. I bet you don't think your work is insignificant. I'm like, no, I do, man. Like often, because a lot of the work of being a pastor is like, it's just sitting with people and poop. Like, I mean, like there's not like, I don't do anything useful. Like I'm not curing cancer. I'm not developing a new technology. I'm not building a business. I'm usually the guy who sits with people when things are going poorly. And I don't even do anything. I'm not like a very good therapist. Like I just sit with people, you know? Right. So it's a weird job. And then I preach the Bible, an old book. That's a weird job. Yeah. And so I do, man, I wrestle with, man, like what actually am I doing? Like what actually is this? And I think that is where hopefully like the Spirit in Christ, like, says like, well, dude, am I enough? I mean, just like the other Mary, like if I build my life around Jesus, can I trust that that's enough? Yeah. Can I trust that offering him to people in his word and in his sacrament and in prayer and in presence, can I trust that that's actually a life worth living and that that's actually enough? And I guess I think it is because I do it. So yeah.
Well, it's called the Barbie movie. You are enough.
Oh, so good, baby. So good.
All right. Well, we'll move along here to a quote from Sophie Hagney, where she's sort of talking about like comparing agency versus collectivism in our modern society here in the 21st century.
Yeah, very interesting. So this is an article that came out in the New York Times last week, and it's I think the title is really offensive. It's something like, "Why are people who are high agency terrible?" Like it's I don't, but
so a little clickbaity.
It's a very clickbaity title. But then you actually read it, and she's much more nuanced in what she's getting at. But what she's driving at is kind of in Silicon Valley, much of the trend in terms of like hiring and interviews. They ask people, it's not so much are you a self-starter, it's now are you a high do you have high agency? Yep. And they distinguish that from a person who's mimetic or an NPC, right? And not was a non-playable character, right? So the question is like, are you a person who like acts on your own, acts independently? You are the commander of your own fate. You do your own thing. Right. Versus someone who just sort of conforms to the crowd, is mimetic, like memes the people around them, right? Now, on the one hand, and she does a good job exploring this, on the one hand, like, there's something to be said for that. Like, the crowd think that occurs in our world is insane and bad.
The internet's only amplified that.
And it exactly. That's exactly right. And so I do think, you know, and Kierkegaard famously said that the crowd is untruth, right? So his argument is like, when you have a crowd, you inherently, it's wrong. Wherever the crowd is, I know it's wrong. I think that's a bit too extreme, but you do see this. Like, man, I meet someone, I'm like, oh, you spend a lot of time on Instagram in leftist circles. Like, you just recycle this same line. Yeah. Or you spend a lot of time on Facebook in right circles. Because you just recycle the same unthinking talking points, right? And so there's a way in which I agree with the critique of being a mimetic person, being an NPC who just sort of gets absorbed into
value captured.
Matt,
I got a fist bump, guys.
Dog.
For the audio listeners, that was a crisp fist bump.
That was a really good fist bump. It felt nice. Okay, But what Sophie Hagney is critiquing, though, is high agency and being like, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to do what I want. That also is not good either, actually. And so this is what she says. So one of the famous lines in Silicon Valley right now is, you can just do things, which, again, I kind of like. Like, you can build things, man. Don't wait for someone else. Go for it. I love that. I'm an American. So good. Okay. You can just do things. But then she says this, but what will you do? In the 21st century in America, we've collectively lost a sense of moral guidance and don't even know exactly where to look for it. But it's still worth looking. To valorize agency without emphasizing its purpose allows us to ignore harder questions like, how do I live a good life? And what about the collective good? The smash and grab mentality leads these questions. Have we forgotten that life might be better lived in concert with others? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And in fact, I should note the example she gives before this is like, and this is one of the things that people who talk about quote unquote high agency is they say it's a high agency move to stand up to the Nazis, right? So back in Germany, and there's kind of that famous picture online of this guy who refuses to salute Hitler when everyone else around him is doing it, right? And like that's a high agency move, right? It's anti-mimetic. That's great. And but she says historically we would have called that not high agency but courage, but we don't call it courage anymore because that implies a moral value.
Oh,
it's so good, right?
Yeah. And
so high agency, and her point here is high agency divorced from moral value isn't good. It has to be united to morals, and I think like so good. So anyway, and you may be like, so why are you talking about this? Did that have anything to do with your sermon? And it really didn't. I was trying to force it in because I just think it's really good.
Right.
So that's
why you're hearing it here?
That's why you're hearing it here on Digging Deeper. Yeah.
No, yeah. I really like that, especially when you tied it in with like without the morals. I think that hits.
Good.
You talked about the global flourishing study in your sermon, just about how those little schools, Harvard and Baylor, were doing some research, and it's really the widest scope research to date on this.
Yep.
And how they found like that third point was that faith communities are cultivating something essential to human thriving.
Yep.
And I know these are like you've referenced other surveys and things in the past, certainly throughout your different sermons that have referenced this as well. But what's that saying that like there is some truth to be found in this?
Yeah, man, I think that's right. And in fact, there's another study by Harvard that was done just in the U.S. and it was done just on church attendance. And it's again, I mean, demonstrates the same thing. Like if you were to condense church attendance into a pill, it like doesn't guarantee, but it increases the likelihood of a longer lifespan, of a happier lifespan, of a healthier lifespan, both physically and mentally. Of greater social connection, like of greater purpose in life. Yeah. Like it is if you were to condense it all into a pill, going to church each week, it is like a recipe for a much greater likelihood of a better life in a longer life in the broadest sense you could imagine. So that's pretty interesting. And that's Harvard. Like they're not out here being
this isn't us spreading propaganda.
Exactly. Incidentally, going back to like confirmation bias and motivated reasoning, it is why I often, when I preach, I try to use sources that are not Christian because I just want to be like, dude, this is just true from a variety of places, right? So, anyway, so what does that say? I mean, I made the sort of tongue-in-cheek line in the sermon of like, it's almost as if we have souls made to know God. It's almost as if we were spiritual beings created to know our Creator, right? And so I think it really does demonstrate that, like, because it isn't just community. People be like, well, you just need community. It's actually community connected to transcendence. And so it's like, and then honestly, it is community connected to Jesus Christ. Like it isn't even just like community connected to transcendence is pretty good. It's even better if it's Jesus. Like, so there's something like, I don't know, it's what we're made for. And so I just think like, it's interesting. We live in a time in life where we can like sort of demonstrably prove that through social science.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it hopefully helps because like, I mean, let's just be honest, like going to church is not actually that fun. I mean, it can be. And like, we have a good church and we all have friends there and, and like, so if you have a good church, there's a lot to it. That's great. But even if it's a great church, and I always joke around and say we're the best church in the world. I do think we are. I love this church. Dude, there's Sundays I don't want to be there. Yeah. Like there's Sundays you don't want to be there. Even if you didn't work here, like it's still just like, dude, I got to get up and, put on pants or shorts as the case may be.
Thank you.
I never pants. All right. And like get out of the house and be with people, some of whom I don't really like that much, but they kind of talk to me. Like it's a thing. And yet I think knowing that like actually something, it's like going to the gym, man, to put it somewhat crassly. It's like, I know if I do this enough, it's for my good.
Yeah.
Even if nothing else, even if it's all a lie, it actually still produces a better life for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a lie, but if it was, it's still going to be better for you to do it.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah.
To keep us moving here, you have something from Eugene Peterson. He's the pastor who wrote The Message, that version of the Bible.
Yeah.
And I think you've even referenced him here before.
Yeah.
Well, either you or Pastor Marcus definitely did. But in his memoir, he tells a story that I think you wanted to talk about here.
Yeah, and this goes a little bit back to kind of my heart right now, just pastorally for people. So his memoir is super good, fascinating. He's just such a good writer. I disagree with him on some things, but he's very, very interesting. But he tells this story about early on in his career where he's pastoring this church, and actually most of his career was in suburban Baltimore, but while he was actually he was teaching at a seminary. So a lot of people don't know this. Sorry, very random. But, people kind of hate on The Message, this very contemporary translation of the Bible. I mean, one, it's not a translation. It's I don't know. It's just a modernizing of the Bible, right? So it's like, do I think it's the same thing as like the Word of God? No. Do I think it's a helpful devotional tool? Yes. And I think you can trust it as a devotional tool because the dude he's ABDs, all but dissertation, on a PhD in Semitic studies, in Semitic languages, so ancient Near Eastern languages. Sure. So he's a Hebrew expert. He's a biblical Greek expert. He's an Akkadian expert. I mean, he's an Ugaritic expert. Like the dude knows language. Doesn't matter. That was a little background for everyone. He was teaching in a seminary while he was finishing up his PhD, which he never ended up finishing. But he's teaching in the seminary, and then he's working as an associate pastor in a church in New York City. And this is like in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And this woman comes into his office as a pastor and says, like, Pastor, I need your help. My husband is like caught up in the mob. He's addicted to gambling, and he owes a bunch of money. And the mob is like, they're going to kill him. I don't know what to do, And so Peterson sits with her and prays with her. And again, this is the uselessness of pastors. Like, what actually why are you telling me? What am I going to do? Right. But he sits with her and prays with her. And then he does, I would do this too. And he connects her with a local sheriff's deputy that he knows. Right. Mm-hmm. And then he actually does things. So they do that. But he says in that moment, and the woman's fine, and so is her husband. Okay. But he says in that moment, he realized that the people he was called to pastor, and I couldn't remember the exact quote, and I couldn't find it because I'm listening to it on audio. But he says, is in that moment he realized as a pastor, the people he was pastoring were gladiators. Right? That it's not like this woman shows up to church every week while her husband is being chased down by the mob, Yeah. And so she's out there like just fighting for it. Like this, she's full on other Mary. You could, as a pastor, look out and be like, man, she's just a pew sitter. She's just showing up, whatever. But it's like, no, man, she's like living this full life, and she's like trying to do what she can to make a life for herself, trying to just make it work. And so she's out there fending off lions, and like, and again, I think that gets at that other Mary thing of like, dude, there's no, in one sense, we are all the other Mary, and in another sense, there's no other Mary. It's like God is using us and has us in places, and whatever we're in, like He's there with us in that. And so I wanted to tell that story because I think it's like a cool way to just think about who we are as God's people, that like there's no ordinary saints in God's church, like that God's kind of called us to be in these different places and to do these things and to just encourage that. So
yeah, no, that's beautiful. I think He meets us where we are in our situation in our lives too. So that's great.
Yep.
All right, to wrap us up here, you talk about, and I think this was probably going to go at the tail end of your sermon, where you were going to sort of fold it back in on how people don't go strictly based off of evidence once they're making their minds up on things. If you wanted to expand on that.
Yeah. So I was going to riff on that, right? Sometimes I try to do that, do a little tie the bow, do a bookend, right, of the intro, and do that with the conclusion. And so I was going to talk about how, like, we don't make decisions on big topics based on evidence alone. And so I was kind of go into, hey, if you're here and you're not a Christian, even though, and I was originally also going to go into the I did go into it, flourishing study, and be like, it's good for you to be a part of a church.
Right.
Even though that evidence is in front of you. Mm-hmm. Because of what I said at the beginning, I actually still don't necessarily expect you to show up next week, right?
Yeah.
And in the same way, we have plenty of people at ULC, I'll just be honest, who are like, Yeah, you kind of come when you want. If I'm real, and you come maybe once a month, once every 2 months, just when you're feeling it. And I think sometimes people are like, "You notice that?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'm here every Sunday." Like, you know.
Right.
And I don't expect someone to hear what I said of like, "Hey, actually, regularly being part of religion." I don't expect that evidence to persuade you.
Right.
But what does persuade us is encounter. What does change our lives, what does make a difference, is encountering Jesus. And so then my prayer, and I can't force that. I wish I could, actually. I don't mean I can't force that out of like a moral thing. I would if I could. I just mean like Jesus does what he wants and the Spirit does what he wants when he wants. And so I can't force that on people. Yeah. But my prayer is that they would seek to encounter him. And my prayer is that their eyes would be open to the ways in which Jesus is already at work in their lives and the Spirit's already at work in their lives, and that he might move them to more regularly and consistently follow after him.
Yeah. Well, I think you put a bow on this segment of the podcast. So I think we'll leave it there. Now, coming up next week, it'll be Pastor Marcus preaching on Cleopas and a friend. Friend's not even named either.
He doesn't get a friend. Yeah.
I know, right? But I'm sure there'll be some similar messaging in there about that too. But head to Luke 24:13-35 to read about that friend in Cleopas, maybe Cleopas. We don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, that's it for this segment. I know Amy and Nate will be talking about There Is a King on the other side of this.
There is a king seated among us. Let every heart.
That was not Amy and Nate. That was Gabe and I.
Gabe
so
and Matt.
Stay around for the real singing. Peace.
Hello, everyone. We're so glad to be back.
Woo!
Just really enjoyed the sermon this past weekend. Loved hearing about the other Mary. There were so many things there that I hadn't known, and just kind of changed my perspective. And I loved a couple of the things that Pastor Gabe talked about, especially when he was talking about how her life, even though she was referred to as the other Mary, her life was so full because she centered it around Jesus. Like all of those amazing things that she witnessed, being with Jesus, being there during the crucifixion and at the tomb and the resurrection. Just so cool how this person that was truly special to God. I just thought that was really neat.
Yeah, just what he said at the kind of biggest moment in all history.
Yeah.
She's called the other Mary.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of Marys, so
yeah.
a lot of Marys to keep track of.
Yeah.
But yeah, that she, that was her whole focus, her whole life, and I mean, it's a great picture of, I think, when you are a servant and the way Jesus is a servant, it's not about you. It's not about your name being written in the history books and you being remembered.
Yeah.
Blah,
so
blah, blah. It's just like, it's Jesus. He empowers you, and she's there, and she just told what God did, and that was the whole mission.
That was it.
And that's what we got to do.
Yeah. No, and I loved how he was talking about how we have these belief systems that sometimes prevent us from seeing evidence, how it kind of clouds our perspective. And for me, like in thinking about that, it kind of gave me a little bit of relief in realizing that, I'm not responsible for someone's belief, but I just have to do what the other Mary did, which is go and tell, and talk about my encounters with Jesus or my experience and what he's done in my life. Yeah. I thought that was really, really cool too.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks have been good reminders about that. I've been talking to some friends about different, actually last night, about different evangelism kind of things. And sometimes you don't have, I think it was the other week, you don't know all the reason, the problem of evil, you don't have the answers to all these things, but it's like, evidence is nice and it's good to think about those things, but especially now, it's like an actual encounter with another person who's willing to share about the most important parts of their life and how God's moved in those. It's like, that's going to break some ground.
Yeah.
And God will do his part. Like we're just told to do that, and God's the one who rose from the dead. We just got to tell the people it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just been a really, I don't know, it's kind of for me, the sermon series has been more missional. Been very mission kind of focused in a subtler way, but
yeah, and that's one of the things that we went to with the music this week was really this idea of how we personally encounter Jesus. And I loved a couple of the lines that Pastor Gabe said. The one especially when he kind of reminded us, when they were talking about global flourishing and how the most successful communities are not flourishing. And
the first world.
Yeah. And we really need a purpose. That is what we long for. And it's because, as Pastor Gabe said, because we have a soul that needs to know the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so the song that we chose to do today is called There Is a King. And I especially love the first verse where it's talking about how Jesus is with us. There is a King who's seated among us. And then the second line is, let every heart receive him now. Where there is praise, he will inhabit. There will be grace and mercy forevermore. And I love that phrasing because it's, again, it's like we're not responsible for it. And so I guess I just want us to sing this song kind of as a prayer for hearts to be opened and for Jesus to do his work in them.
Amen.
Cool.
Yeah. There is a King seated among us. Let every heart receive him now. Where there is praise, he will inhabit, and there will be grace and mercy all around. And every burden will be lifted in his presence, and every trophy will be laid down at his feet. There is a name that reigns above all others, Jesus Christ, the King above all kings. And all our worship will belong to you forever. Holy, holy, for all eternity. Yours is the name that reigns above all others, Jesus Christ, the King above all kings. Jesus Christ, the King above all kings.
Bye. Have a great week.
Thanks, Amy and Nate, for walking us through There's a King. And I also just loved hearing your guys' conversations about just the other Mary and how she centered her life around Jesus. And that was what ultimately she cared about and what her significance came from. So loved hearing that from you guys, as always. Now, coming up next week will be Cleopas and a Friend. And that will be Pastor Marcus preaching on Luke 24:13-35. So make sure to head there if you want to jump start on next week. But for now, have a great rest of your week, and God bless.